Cartoons are peak fiction, or entertainment, or media, whatever relatively similar concept. The point is, cartoons are peak. They are easily my favorite thing ever. Bet you never would have guessed. But it's a weird thing for cartoons to be my favorite thing because the word cartoon isn't super well defined. I feel like in most animation centric circles, whether that be IRL or on the internet, people recognize the word as meaning animated television series, which is the thing we're ranking today. But outside of that, the average Joe seems to understand cartoons as just anything animated. And it's taken on a bit of a derogatory connotation, or at least that's the vibe I get. Even when people speak positively about cartoons, it tends to come with an addendum along the lines of, this is really good, for a cartoon, and that just pisses me off to no end. Because I think cartoons are just inherently better than everything else. Animation allows for more creative concepts, stunning visuals, limitless possibilities, and all around just more fun and inventive storytelling both in television and film. But television allows for deeper dives into characters and worlds that often just can't be accomplished in film. It's just so obvious that this shit slaps, and yet film school intellectuals, I can say that because I am one, look down on them like they're somehow lesser. Well, what's the use in all this conceptualizing when the proof is in the pudding? Let's list off 10 incredible examples of why cartoons are the fucking best. And now I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. I assume anyone who clicked on this video is on board with cartoons, but if you're anything like me, hearing all that laid out was therapeutic, so I thought it was worth it. Alright, let's get a move on.
Mabel, do you believe in ghosts?
I believe you're a big dork.
So starting off, we have a bit of a cheat. After laying out the rest of the list, I realized I wanted to use my number 10 spot to talk about a Nickelodeon show. It just felt right to do that. But, I couldn't pick one. I like too many of them. So we're just gonna roll with a three-way tie. Don't worry, this is the only time we'll do this. First off, Invader Zim. This show is gross and creepy and loud and obnoxious and bizarre in every way, shape, and form. I love it. The decision to make the protagonist the villain creates this ripple effect that governs everything about how the show works. Zim is really only the protagonist in the sense that the camera is usually on him. He has no arc, he doesn't grow and change, he almost never succeeds in his goals, his plans and aspirations are nonsensical and foolhardy. Nothing about this should work, but it totally does. It is so much fun to just watch the madness unfold. Full credit to Gurr for magnifying that madness by a million. Imagine if the show actually centered on Dib. It would probably be fine, but everything special about this show's identity would be lost. It is so distinct and memorable because it's about the villain. And then Enter the Florpus happened, and they pretty much had to actually focus on Dib as the protagonist in order to adhere to basic film structure, which is fine, they made it work, but we all know the star of the show is none other than Invader Zim. Now let's pivot from a supervillain to a superhero, Danny Phantom. Talk about a stellar concept, a superhero with ghost powers. That core concept really carries the show far. It is just inherently cool to see an action show where you're flying around, phasing through walls, possessing people. The whole thing's great. And the whole ghostly, Halloween-y theming gave this show a really strong and distinct identity among the Nicktoons. But what really made this show great was its rogues gallery. So many killer ghost designs for Danny to face. Skulker, Technus, Watcher, Ember, Youngblood, the Box Ghost! And of course, Vlad Plasmius, who, as I've said in the past, is such a perfect foil for Danny and functions as the best possible recurring villain for him. Not to mention how that concept is carried even further through Dark Danny, who really makes the most out of his one appearance. The whole thing just screams cool, and every now and then there are some genuinely great story ideas here. I actually ended up really liking the ultimate culmination of Phantom Planet. Vlad finally confronting Jack and getting his comeuppance, Dan becoming a proper public figure, finally resolving the romantic subplot. It worked really well for me overall. But why pick between a superhero and a supervillain? ¿Por qué no los dos? Enter El Tigre, the adventures of Manny Rivera, son of the legendary hero White Pantera, grandson of the evil supervillain Puma Loco. Okay, I'm done. I really love the idea of an anti-hero stuck in the middle of a family rivalry, forging their own path ahead as they take cues from both of the major adult figures in their lives. And, as a bonus, it's fun. Sometimes we want to save the world, and sometimes we want to vibe with the baddies. I really love the different culminations of this concept towards the ends of the show's run. There's the one everyone seems to remember where the audience got to choose whether the finale got the hero ending or the villain ending. But there's another episode that's listed as the last episode of the show that I might like even more. It ends with the realization that the most important thing isn't whether you're a hero or a villain, but that you're a family, and whatever you do, you should do it together. In a sense, Manny's dad and granddad learned to adopt something closer to Manny's lifestyle as he makes his own way in life, and I think that's such an amazing ending message for what this show was. Also, all the Spanish. I like the Spanish. I enjoy that. So, yeah, those are the 3 shows that collectively make up my number 10 spot. But you know how top 10 lists always have a bunch of honorable mentions at the end? Well, I thought it'd be much more fitting to do honorable mentions as we go, you know, whenever they're relevant. So excuse me while I list, like, every Nicktoon that I like that didn't make the list. Ren and Stimpy, Rugrats, Rocko's Modern Life, Hey Arnold, The Wild Thornberrys, Not You, Chalk Zone, Jimmy Neutron, My Life as a Teenage Robot, Cat Scratch, Back at the Barnyard, Penguins of Madagascar, Tough Puppy, Kung Fu Panda, Legends of Awesomeness, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and The Loud House. Alright, let's move on.
I'm not a 9-year-old! I'm 13! Technically a teen!
Holy shit, I never get to talk about Cartoon Network shows. Well, I didn't really watch much CN as a kid, and most of the shows from that network didn't age well to me, but there was a show I completely missed out on when I was younger that I decided to binge watch on HBO Max later in life. That show was Teen Titans. In the past, I had always been a little confused as to why Teen Titans Go got so mercilessly hated on. Now I get it. The original set way too high a bar. It's ridiculous how high quality this show is. You can tell me any one of these 5 is your favorite character and I'd wholeheartedly believe you. Every single one of them is so well realized and fun to watch, and a lot of them are my favorites in certain arbitrary categories. Raven is easily the coolest. Her demon half and the toll it takes on her makes for such an interesting struggle happening in the background of every single fight scene, only for it all to come to a head in Season 4's Trigon storyline, easily the biggest spectacle the show ever achieved. Starfire is obviously the nicest member of the crew, and thus is often the most pleasant to watch. It's so easy to be in a good mood when Starfire's on screen. And even though she never gets a big multi-episode end-of-season arc the way the others do, her story still feels really well done as we sporadically explore her strange relationship with her home planet and the responsibilities she left behind there. Beast Boy has my favorite arc in the show, for sure. The entire Terra storyline is heartbreaking, and the way the show ends with this bizarre, backhanded, bittersweet resolution, your heart is crying out for closure and you get nothing. I will say overall, I'm not thrilled by how Season 5 plays out, but that ending really does save it. Also, Beast Boy do be funny. But my definitive favorite does end up being Robin. Maybe that's just Batman bias or something, but I always find Robin to be the most compelling. The pressure around leading the team, being a badass superhero despite the lack of powers, the whole Season 1 Slade storyline, the romance with Starfire, it all just adds up for me. And Cyborg's also great. He just doesn't fit into an easy, he's the best at this sort of deal like the others do. If anything, I think Cyborg's the most fascinating in how he's grown past the Teen Titans and is now regularly a part of Justice League escapades. So yeah, a pitch-perfect cast, all with different strengths, great storylines that consistently challenge them in interesting ways, and a horrible reboot that makes the original look even better with every passing day. Honestly, this show might rank higher if I just watched it when I was a little younger or it was just fresher in my mind, but there are just too many good shows to talk about. Speaking of, honorable mention for this go-around is Batman the Animated Series. How on theme of me. Just one of the best Batman adaptations out there, if you ask me. Honestly, just the novelty of having different episodes dedicated to the origin stories of all the different villains is enough to make this such a fun watch. It all feels like such quintessential Batman. Introducing Harley Quinn is just another fantastic bonus.
By an antisocial shut-in. Those people are called animators.
It's time for Animaniacs. Specifically the 2020 reboot, believe it or not. Honorable mention to the original 90s show, obviously, but I've only been exposed to that show through online clips. And while those have been great, the reboot is just exactly my vibe. Makes sense that a show that leans on up-to-date referential humor is gonna appeal more to me when I'm living in the time that they are often referencing. Let's start by addressing the segments that are just kind of whatever. The gnome that lives in people's mouths actively sucks and I hate it. Starbucks and Cindy is fine, it grew on me as it went along. The one-offs are pretty good all around, shout out to the murder pets. And then there's Pinky and the Brain. It's fine. I get the appeal, but the whole thing was just a little too predictable for me. The best segments were definitely the ones where they broke away from the usual formula, and I did really appreciate those. But Pinky and the Brain's popularity often distracts from the real stars of the show. The Warners are so good. I can confidently say that I prefer the reboot over the original only because the reboot has less other segments to distract from the magic that is the Warners. This idea is just way too genius, plopping 20s and 30s style cartoon characters into the modern world to wreak havoc. The whole thing is almost obnoxiously meta, but they find a way to make it endearing and fun every single time. And it's easily the best thing out there that iterates upon what those old-fashioned cartoons were doing. Short, bite-sized adventures with the sole purpose of getting as many laughs out of you as possible. And at the center of it all are those 3 feeder kids, Yakko, Wakko, and Dot. When I was first getting into the show, Yakko was definitely my favorite character. He's the know-it-all ringleader who's the most likely to break out into song at a moment's notice. But as I got more into the show, my favor slowly shifted to Wakko. If Yakko's who I aspire to be, Wakko is where I'm currently at. Not quite able to keep up with the insanity, but still enjoying every minute of it. He's also got the most relatable quotes. Love the middle sibling energy. Someone please leave a comment to convince me that Dot is actually the best Warner so I could say they've all been my favorite at some point. But even though Yakko tends to steal the mic, there's no doubt that all three rock in the music department. Honestly, if you want me to like your show, just stuff it full of musical numbers. I love that shit. And every song in this show is so good, especially since they end up being about anything and everything. Literally, there's one about the entire history of Earth. Plus songs about the Magna Carta, Christopher Columbus, exoplanets, making everything cute, convincing Santa to do his job, gruel, like the famously gross food in media, there's a song about gruel. There's even a song about reboots themselves. I don't actually like this one. But you will always catch me singing these songs basically all the time, potentially even with very poor imitations of the character voices. A griffin, ha! No way, Jose! Let's serve it poached with hollandaise. The egg is not for eating. We could fry it up as well. Maybe we gotta do an Animaniacs song ranking at some point. Add that to the list of video ideas. But anyway, yeah, Animaniacs, it's so much fun. Final point here, I know some people haven't been into the reboot because it's got more political jokes, and to that I just have to say, y'all gotta learn to laugh at yourselves more. A little playful jest isn't hurting anybody. Also, the global warming song slaps. Opinion is forming, it's clear global warming is something we'll have to embrace. Pollution can't keep on, cause when all the land's gone, we'll have to stop living in space. For a more proper honorable mention here, we'll do the Cuphead show and the recent Paul Rudish Mickey Mouse cartoons, both of which sort of echo that same old-fashioned cartoon appeal that Animaniacs is going for. And they both also do it very well. Cuphead gets bonus points for its video game origins, we'll talk more about that later, but Mickey Mouse is, of course, an ever-enduring classic, and both kill it in the music department as well.
Oh. And it can do that for, like, infinity.
Back on the Cartoon Network train, let's talk about Infinity Train. The show killed in its prime. Feels like out of everything on this list, this is probably the show that the fewest people have seen given the circumstances. It started out airing on Cartoon Network like normal, but its last 2 seasons became HBO Max exclusive. Then the show unceremoniously ended because life is cruel, and then it was deleted from HBO Max for some godforsaken reason. And it's a real shame because this show was doing something really interesting to me. Every season followed a different protagonist, often a one-off character from a previous season, essentially making the show an anthology series connected by the shared location, the titular Infinity Train. And also the cat, I guess, fun recurring character. The train itself is such a fun, video gamey concept, a train where each car is essentially its own little pocket dimension with some kind of puzzle to solve that ideally will help you not only physically progress through the train, but also progress on whatever emotional journey the train deems is necessary. In hindsight, the first season following Tulip feels a lot more like a proof of concept when stacked up to what would come later. Not to say that it's bad in any way, on the contrary, I'll probably stand by the fact that Season 1 has the best companion characters with Atticus and 1-1. And the story of a young girl frustrated by her parents' divorce works great. But Season 2 is when this shit gets amazing. The journey of Mirror Tulip, or Lake as she eventually names herself, is incredible. The search for identity, belonging, and freedom in a world that seemingly demands that she be unhappy thanks to some arbitrary rule set that just didn't account for denizens wanting to do things independent of the train. This whole exploration of the autonomy of denizens is so fascinating, and it very naturally builds to Season 3, which might have actually scarred me for life. In a good way, though. The brutal tone shift when Simon, does the thing, you know the one. The way he gets irreversibly caught up in this narrative he and Grace created, and his absolute refusal to see the monster he's become, it's actually heartbreaking. Point being, Infinity Train seemingly was just getting better and better as it went along. Season 4 was just okay. I guess they needed a breather after the last season, but I just didn't find the story of these two goobers to be very interesting. The whole thing felt pretty by the numbers for a show that has always felt like the antithesis to that. Also, Kez was annoying. But yeah, overall, Infinity Train is absolutely incredible, and I really hope it gets revived somehow. Everything I've seen and read about the planned 5th season looks so cool. It apparently would have documented Amelia's takeover of the train, and that sounds super interesting. Of course, there were apparently 8 seasons planned that just never came to fruition, which is a crime. Would have killed for some kind of proper conclusion. Not that an anthology thing like this really needs that, but it'd be nice. For the honorable mention here, I've got to go with Over the Garden Wall, which gives pretty similar vibes to Infinity Train if you ask me. I was never as into this miniseries as everyone else was. I'm not really an autumn person, but I have to acknowledge how good it is. If you haven't seen it, go seek it out right now. If you binge watch the whole thing, it's functionally a movie. You'll enjoy it, trust me.
The only person clever enough to defeat Ducktective is... Ducktective!
I don't think I've ever been more immediately hooked on a show than I was on DuckTales. It's just a little too perfect. A reboot of a classic Disney afternoon show, honorable mention to that show, of course, that takes the previously shallow characters and gives them all distinct and vibrant personalities as they go on wild adventures, building to a grander storyline that pays homage to not just the classic DuckTales, but like everything Disney Afternoon has ever put out. How could any Disney fan not be immediately interested? And you know what? It paid out. The adventures were fun, the references were on point, and the characters were absolutely the best part. Every single one shines through not only in the regular banter of any given episode, but also in the grander story arcs they're given. Scrooge, the triplets, Donald, Webby, Launchpad, Beakley, Gyro, Glomgold, Magica, Gizmo Duck, Goldie, the fucking Three Caballeros, and Darkwing Duck. A real oops all bangers of a cast. I consider Season 1 to be the definitive peak of the show. I just love Dewey's journey through the pilot of proving himself as an adventurer and becoming obsessed with the adventuring legacy of his family through his search for answers about his mom. The last crash of the Sun Chaser is one of my favorite episodes of the show for sure, and it's because it's the height of all this drama as secrets are revealed and no one takes it well. And it all takes place on the plane. It takes a lot to make a one-location episode like this so good. And the way Magica takes advantage of the broken family situation to rise to power, it's all just too perfect. Season 2 hits pretty hard as well, with Louie's journey of learning what makes him special and coming to understand the value of humility. I also love how the intense drama surrounding the disappearance of Della Duck is even further paid off with her being brought back and becoming part of the main cast. What a great long-term payoff. It also sort of feeds into my personal favorite episode of the show, Last Christmas, which is not only a perfect homage to Mickey's Christmas Carol, but also gives us young Donald with the original triplet voice and Dewey connecting with young Della in such a fantastic story. I do wish the disparate threads of Season 2 came together a little better in the finale. I haven't even brought up the bet with Glomgold or the Moon People yet, but overall, it was a fantastic ride. So Season 3's kinda mid. Yeah, I don't know, nothing about it really captured me in terms of a season-long storyline. It had fantastic individual parts, namely Quack Pack, Let's Get Dangerous, and the life and crimes of Scrooge McDuck, but the whole didn't quite come together for me. And I'll admit, a lot of that was because I didn't like the Webby twist in the finale. Not sure if this is the kind of video where I should spoil that, might save it for a DuckTales episode ranking, but yeah, I was not a fan of how it muddled the found family messaging they had going on with her. But unlike a certain other Disney show, the ending was not horrendous enough to destroy the goodwill the show had built up to that point. I guess slightly passive-aggressive honorable mention to Star vs. the Forces of Evil. It was fun until it wasn't. But much more genuine honorable mention to the two other Disney shows that got World Showcase adventures in Epcot. That's the theme for this one. It's Kim Possible and Phineas and Ferb, just roll with it. Every time I return to these childhood favorites, I can't help but enjoy myself. They hold up surprisingly well. In Phineas and Ferb's case, I do think the formula got a little stale and the writers became a lot more interested in the B plot than the A plot, a problem Milo Murphy's Law inherited, but overall, it was still a great time.
When I get that time wish, you'll wish you were never born. Or rather, you'll wish you were born because I'm gonna wish you were never born!
So, this is a little weird. The entry here is The Fairly Odd Parents, my favorite childhood show. The problem? I've talked at length about how much I like this show twice before already, so I'm not really sure how to approach it this go around. Okay, how about what is almost certainly my biggest FOP hot take? Poof did nothing wrong. Poof was a delightful addition in the later seasons of this show, and not only did he not send the show downhill, but I would also honestly argue that he enhanced it. I don't know, it's just a fun added wrinkle to things that there's a baby around now. It made for a handful of fun scenarios that didn't horribly destroy the core formula of the show. And because he's a baby, he's not really all that intrusive. Plus, the special he was introduced in was great. Gotta rank all the Fairly OddParents specials someday. Also, Foop is fun. I don't love that his existence seems to have deleted all the other anti-fairies, but he's fun. So yeah, there are only 2 seasons of FOP that are actively terrible. Everything else is cool and great even. Also, gotta say, even though I do agree that Chloe and Sparky are annoying, I don't think they're inherently terrible inclusions. They were just poorly done. Chloe especially feels like her presence ended up flanderizing Timmy's character to the point where he was just unlikable. Also, the Flash animation was terrifying. But with all that said, I still can't help but love this show. Whatever meat grinder they send it through just can't ruin it for me. I cannot express enough how much this show matters to me. It's probably the thing that really significantly stimulated my imagination and creativity growing up. It just invites that kind of thinking when the premise of the show is so limitless. I remember around the time that every kid had imaginary friends, I had imaginary fairy godparents. I couldn't help but daydream about what I'd wish for and what kind of hijinks might ensue. Growing up, I even came up with a spin-off of the show in my head that centered more around Fairy World, and that's one of those silly little things that I realize now was an early version of my desire to make stories. And that's really special to me. Anyway, Fairly OddParents is fun. Kinda like Danny Phantom, the Rogues Gallery here is fantastic. Vicky, Crocker, Dark Laser, the Anti-Fairies, the Pixies, Tootie, Remy Bucksaplenty, Norm the Genie. Tough Puppy had this too. Something about these Butch Hartman shows really makes for good villains. Probably because he is one. Look, if Harry Potter fans are still allowed to exist despite this perpetual shitstorm, I can cherish these cartoons while dunking all over this dumpster fire of a man. Okay, so this is actually pretty much the last distinctly childhood show of mine we'll be covering. So let's use this honorable mention to cover one of the biggest childhood obsessions of mine we've yet to talk about. Pokemon. Despite my parents' best efforts to prevent it, I ended up being a gamer, and I put a lot of the blame for that on the Pokemon anime. Something about the way the video games, trading cards, toys, and show all fed into each other was just really fun to dive into as a kid. And despite the fact that it's kind of impossible for me to watch this show today, I can't help but still appreciate it.
Kill it! Kill it with fire! Everyone flee!
So I always say that Fairly Odd Parents is my favorite Nicktoon, but like, come on. I think everyone's favorite Nicktoon is actually Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's the obligatory pick, but like, it deserves it. It's so fucking good. Everyone and their mother has talked about how good it is. So like, what do I have to add? Yes, Zuko's redemption arc is great. Yes, the world is so well realized and fascinating. The animation is fantastic. The action is so well choreographed. The storyline is engaging. The characters are magical. Why isn't this the obvious #1 spot, you buffoon? Well, it's mostly a vibes thing. I can honestly say that the shows ranked above Avatar have a lot of the same merits I've just listed, but I just vibe with those shows more. Avatar in comparison was always the show I recognized as being amazing, but never quite had that same personal attachment to. So, what of it? I still have it ranked this high, so what makes Avatar so special to me, personally? I think I can narrow it down to two things. Number one, the magic system. Or combat system. Which is really just an extension of the world-building thing, but you get what I mean. Bending is so cool. This is another thing that as a kid was just fun to imagine having. Not that I watched much Avatar as a kid, it was something I mostly watched later in life, but I caught an episode or two here and there. But yeah, the way the magical abilities of the world are tied to the 4 elements, how they each reflect different real-world martial arts, how the Fire Nation is able to suppress certain people by putting them in specialized prisons like a metal ship for earthbenders or suspended cages with constant dry air being pumped in for waterbenders, and you can't suppress the airbenders the same way? Well, maybe that's why the war started by surprise attacking all of them. This was a really well thought out takeover. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, bending. The way the whole system flows and fits together is so intrinsic to what makes this show work, and it's incredible. The second thing that really sticks out to me about the show, it's the ladies. Yeah, I don't know, Aang, Sokka, and Zuko are all fine and good, but I think this was one of the earliest cartoons I watched where the women were given just as much attention as the men, and it really sticks out to me. I guess Teen Titans also had this going for it, but Avatar still feels very distinct to me in this regard. Katara's journey to prove herself as a waterbender, followed by her confrontation with the horrors of what her powers can really do, and eventually having to choose whether or not she will exact that power on the man who took her mother from her. Azula's general badassery and strategic manipulation of those around her to get what she wants, only to realize that she's driven everyone away in the process. Toph just being the best character every time she's on screen. Yeah, she's not that deep, but she is so much fun, and we appreciate that. She does have an arc and all, but she's mostly fun. Shout out to Mei and Ty Lee, they're also great. In general, I am by far the most fond of Season 2. The Zuko and Iroh story, the Ba Sing Se, the Toph, it's the best. I will say, just to critique a show loved by literally everyone, was never big on the romances throughout the show. Other than Sokka and Suki, everything else kinda just fell flat for me. Especially Aang and Katara, like, nope, no thank you, not a fan. But what's one measly little complaint on what is otherwise a universally beloved show? Avatar. You know it's great, what do you need me for? Obvious honorable mention to The Legend of Korra. I've only seen one season, but it was pretty good, I think, and a friend of mine would kill me if I didn't include it. For a more fun honorable mention, I had to stick Star Wars The Clone Wars somewhere on here. It didn't fit thematically anywhere else. It's got its slow parts, but The Siege of Mandalore is like my favorite piece of Star Wars media ever, so the show gets mentioned just for that. Also, shout out to Rebels. The same friend who likes Korra would also kill me if I didn't include Rebels. There, that's the theming for this section. Murder by friend. Moving on.
Who wants to hear hoo-ha the owl? Oh.
So, you know the last video I made? The one where I shit on Nick All-Star Brawl 2? Some people in the comments of that video gave me shit for liking the Owl House. This is my direct message to those people. This show is fantastic, fuck off. Especially if you're homophobic or some shit, doubly fuck off. I don't want any of that in my comment section. Can we talk about how good the Lumity storyline is? This is how you do enemies to lovers and generally just make an infinitely more compelling bully character. Season 1 of the Owl House was the Amity show. She stole every scene, she was the face of the show, it was all anyone could talk about. And that was a good thing, because the way she goes from obsessing about being the best to slowly letting her guard down with Luce and connecting over stupid stuff like the Good Witch Azura, and all of a sudden, oops, it's gay panic. I was right there with everyone else blasting Little Miss Perfect as the Grom dance played in the background. And massive credit for actually committing to getting them together before the show ended. I feel like a lesser show would dangle this in front of the audience until the finale, but not Owl House, baby. Hootie got these two crazy kids together and we actually got to watch their romantic relationship blossom. That's so fucking rare, and it was so good. And let's not undersell everything else this show has going for it. This world is incredible. I want to live here. The anti-fantasy world. Everything's magic, but in the grimiest, most off-putting way possible. Hell yeah. Fuck Harry Potter, fuck Quidditch, give me Grudgeby. While the world in Amity carried Season 1, everyone got an upgrade for Season 2. There's a 4-way tie between Amity, King, Luce, and Hunter for my favorite character. But I think at the end of it all, King takes the cake. The way the delusion that defined his character for so long gets shattered and the new sense of self King has to find after that, I love it. That's how you take a bit character and give them some much needed emotional depth. Also, gotta say, love the Hispanic representation with Luce. Hinted at this with El Tigre, but I'm Hispanic and this stuff really just makes me smile. However, kinda hard to talk about the Owl House without bringing up how it got shafted in the back half of its run. But you know what? Despite how Disney killed the show for wanting to show a queer relationship, despite how they had to scramble just to get as much of Season 3 as they got, despite the brand new villain they introduced at the last possible moment, they made it work. Somehow they managed to bring it home in a beautiful 3-part conclusion that wraps up just about everything you could want to see wrapped up. I made an early reaction video to the finale and I was somewhat lukewarm on it then, but as I suspected, watching all 3 parts together really improved the whole thing for me. It's an excellent end to an excellent show. And yeah, I vibe so hard with the Collector, at least aesthetically. I like the purple space pajamas. Oh, and can we talk about Belos? How do you make what turned out to be some New England dick one of the best realized villains in animation? He is somehow both a functional physical character with goals and aspirations, but also symbolically, he is conformity incarnate, and we are right to rip out his heart and crush his brains beneath our feet. That's some good character plot and theme synergy if you ask me. And it all supports the ultimate message of this show, right? Don't conform, be weird, it's the best. Anyone who says otherwise is missing out. For this honorable mention, we'll give it to the Owl House's sister show, Amphibia. I've never been nearly as fond of Amphibia when compared to the Owl House. It's still really good, but I have some big complaints with it that might be worth exploring in its own full video. I think there's definitely enough to talk about there, both good and bad. Constructively speaking, of course. I don't want to make a hit piece against the show or anything. I think it'd just be interesting to discuss. But yeah, definitely good enough to earn an honorable mention.
A sandwich made out of rocks.
Candy rocks?
Regular rocks.
And now for my favorite Cartoon Network show, Steven Universe. Obvious honorable mention to Steven Universe Future. This is another one that I've discussed at length on this channel, but that was 3 years ago now, so holy shit, that was 3 years ago? Point being, Steven Universe is fantastic. Don't believe the haters. What a magical little show. I say little jokingly, this ended up being a very big show, but I think this might be one of those where you just had to be there for it. I have a lot of trouble recommending this show to people. I'm typically of the mind that watching something as it comes out is a lot more fun than binge watching. It's probably the main reason why shows like Teen Titans and Avatar are ranked lower for me, while Owl House and Steven Universe are higher. I have friends that have binged the show and loved it, but for me, so many of my core memories surrounding this show were diving into each Steven bomb as it released and talking about the reveals, lore drops, new fusions, new songs. Oh yeah, the songs! Like I said with Animaniacs, you make your show a musical and it gets so many bonus points with me. Having a Steven Universe playlist is such a great way to carry the show with me as I jam out to bangers like Strong in the Real Way, Comet, Here Comes a Thought, Stronger Than You, and the absolute peak that is It's Over, Isn't It? I'm something of a Pearl girl, and this song just encapsulates everything I love about this character through such beautiful music. And man, the drama of this show was so good. I obviously am enraptured by Pearl's struggle to move on from Rose and come to terms with carrying out her mission despite all the pain surrounding that promise, but also Amethyst feeling inadequate and maturing into likely Steven's closest confidant, and poor Steven burdened with the baggage his mother left for him and not one but 2 broken families to fix. Also, gotta talk about how much the show did for queer representation in children's animation. Despite my qualms with her, Garnet is iconic. Ruby and Sapphire's wedding is a landmark moment and will forever go down in history. Too bad the network killed the show because of it. Can we please stop immediately canceling shows for doing cool queer representation? Pretty please? There is so much to talk about with this show, but Again, I literally talked about each episode meticulously for 3 hours, so if you really want to hear me ramble about it, go check that out. For now, I'll use this time to talk about a handful of Cartoon Network honorable mentions, namely Adventure Time, The Amazing World of Gumball, and Regular Show. I've at least watched a little bit of all of these, but I never quite got into them as I did Steven Universe, despite them all being solid shows. I think of the three, Gumball definitely ended up being my favorite, which maybe sounds insane to someone who has watched all of Adventure Time, but it is what it is. Suffice to say, for as much as I am a Nickelodeon kid, CN definitely had its highlights.
God, hot Belgian waffles! Wait, I'm alone. I can swear for real! Son of a...
Before we get to number 1, let's run through one final set of honorable mentions. The adult cartoons. Specifically, Futurama, South Park, Rick and Morty, and that recent Harley Quinn series. Not all of these shows are perfect, some definitely have their extremely controversial elements, but overall I've enjoyed them more than I haven't. I think. It's hard to tell with Rick and Morty anymore. Also, I haven't seen Season 4 of Harley Quinn, I hope it's still good. But there's a greater point I want to make here, and it's that while I've enjoyed all these shows, they don't really stack up to the stuff quote-unquote made for kids. As much as I do firmly believe that animation is a medium, not a genre, and it could be used to tell any story for any age group, I also think that limitation breeds creativity. Adult cartoons tend to jump the shark so quickly because they need to be as violent and raunchy and buzzworthy as possible to compete with each other. That doesn't mean there isn't great stuff there, still haven't seen Arcane, but it can make me roll my eyes a lot. Meanwhile, because kids shows have to adhere to certain admittedly arbitrary rules, I find they have to lean on more universal storytelling, on more clever jokes, on more creatively driven scenarios. I guess think of it like this. Adult cartoons are just made for adults, while kids' cartoons can be enjoyed by anybody, young and old, and that's a lot more valuable to me. So, finally, here we are at number 1, Gravity Falls. Another reason I wanted to do the adult cartoons rant first, aren't the adult jokes in shows like Gravity Falls so much better because they're actually surprising in this context? A character like Grunkle Stan is nothing in an adult cartoon, but he is a riot in a kid's show. In fact, this whole show is a riot. I haven't really talked much about comedy in this video, mostly because I am a humorless wretch, but Gravity Falls makes me laugh out loud every time. I honestly can't even explain it. Something about this show's sense of humor is just perfect for me. Hell, early on that was like the big selling point. What's the monster for this episode? A bunch of lawn gnomes in a trench coat? A living wax sculpture of Sherlock Holmes? A race of minotaur creatures that are obsessed with being manly? Perfect. Don't change a thing, this shit's the best. And it's incredible how it never once undermines or gets in the way of the overarching story. This show lived and died by its mystery, and it delivered. Everything fit together so nicely, every clue felt purposeful, every theory felt plausible, but the ultimate reveal, despite it being one of those major theories, didn't feel underwhelming in the slightest. And I think that's because the big reveal was never prioritized over the story they were telling. Not What He Seems still hits like a truck, even though I know full well how it all pans out from here. I firmly believe that there isn't a single bad episode of this show. I can't earnestly say that for any other show on this list. And if I could just geek out for a quick second, I was one of those people losing my mind over what the hell the Bill Cipher wheel in the opening meant. Was Wendy ice? Were those glasses the same one from Carpet Diem? How the hell would the llama come into play? Were the symbols actually representing locations instead of characters? Even though in hindsight, it probably wasn't meant to be anything super important. In fact, I'm pretty sure the audio commentaries on the Blu-ray I have confirmed that. I actually popped off when they took some time in the finale to give us fans an actual answer for what that damn thing was for. And they didn't do it arbitrarily either. It was a vehicle for one last conflict between Stan and Ford that would ultimately lead them to the emotional conclusion they needed to get to. Top-notch stuff right there. And the ultimate conclusion of the whole thing was really impactful for me. In the Steven Universe section, I talked about how much I prefer watching shows as they come out. Well, Gravity Falls was something that I distinctly remember watching on its exact premiere date and sticking with all the way until the finale premiered. I remember getting interested because of this series of teasers where some creature had run into the closet. You never saw Dipper and Mabel's faces because they were holding the camera as they gave updates on what the creature did. It was intriguing and funny, and little did I know that this would basically define my personality for my entire life. And much like The Owl House, it was a show that loved being weird and insisted that its audience loved being weird too. So, when that ending hit, that bittersweet note really affected me. Summer was over. The ultimate conclusion was that it was time to accept change. Not to let go of that weirdness, no, never. And of course we'll always remember that insane summer we shared, but to look forward and embrace the unknown, to find that next adventure even though it might be scary. It makes me emotional every single time. Hell, even the Journal 3 book they released has the same effect on me. Every time I flip to that last page and read the final passage encouraging me the same way the show's ending always did, I honestly tear up. There's a damn good reason I proudly wear my Dipper Pines hat whenever I'm out in public. This show just means so much more to me than words can realistically describe. I will cherish it forever. So that was fun. Hope you all enjoyed. I wanted to make something nice after my last video was so negative, and this felt kinda perfect. I also sort of designed this as a channel trailer in disguise since it touched on so much of what this channel ends up covering. Gotta throw in some Kingdom Hearts references and we're good to go. I don't know if by the time I upload this we'll have passed 800 subscribers yet, but in any case, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't and feel so inclined, please like, comment, and subscribe. More stuff whenever the stuff happens. Bye!